Jake Murphy wiped the sweat from his forehead as he watched the mining robots work in the distance. The morning sun on New Eden cast long shadows across the red dirt. He had been running the mining colony for 3 years now, and everything was going well. The robots dug deep into the ground looking for rare metals that Earth needed. Life was peaceful here. The colony had 200 people living in small houses scattered around the main buildings. Linda Carter ran the day-to-day business from her office in the central building. Pete Williams kept everyone safe with his security team. Dr. Amy Brooks studied the rocks and soil in her lab. Everyone had a job to do, and they did it well. Jake was thinking about the new shipment of supplies coming next week when something strange happened. The sky began to change color. What had been bright blue suddenly turned dark purple. The air felt thick and heavy. All the birds stopped singing at once. "What the hell is that?" Pete Williams said over the radio. His voice sounded worried. Jake looked up and saw something that made his blood run cold. A huge shape was forming in the sky above them. It looked like it was made of crystal, but crystal that moved and pulsed with its own light. The thing was massive. It had to be as big as their entire colony, maybe bigger. The crystal creature hung in the air without making any sound. Strange lights ran across its surface like water flowing over glass. Jake had never seen anything like it. Nobody had. This was not from Earth or any human world. "All colony members report to the main building immediately," Linda Carter announced, over the speakers. Her voice was calm, but Jake could hear the fear behind it. The crystal thing began to move. It floated down toward the ground slowly, like a feather falling through thick air. As it got closer, Jake could see it better. The surface was not smooth. It had patterns cut into it that hurt to look at. The patterns seemed to move when he was not looking directly at them. People ran from their houses toward the main building. Some carried their children. Others grabbed important things. Everyone looked scared. Jake ran too, but he kept looking. Back at the crystal creature. When the thing was about 100 feet above the ground, it stopped moving down. Instead, it began to spin. The spinning was slow at first, but got faster. As it spun, the strange lights on its surface got brighter. Then it attacked. A beam of pure white light shot out from the crystal creature and hit the mining robots. The metal machines simply melted like ice in a fire. The beam moved to the power plant next. The building that had taken months to build was gone in seconds. "Get to cover!" Pete Williams shouted. He had his weapon ready, but Jake wondered what good it would do against something so big. The white beam kept moving. It hit the landing pad where the supply ships came down. It hit the water treatment center. It hit the storage buildings where they kept food and medicine. Everything the beam touched turned to liquid metal and smoke. But something strange was happening. The beam was not hitting everything. It melted the vehicles but left the trees alone. It destroyed the computers but did not touch the wooden tables. It seemed to pick and choose what to destroy. "It's only hitting our technology," Dr. Brooks said over the radio. She was watching from inside the main building. "Look at the pattern. Every target has been something we built or made." Jake saw she was right. The alien creature was destroying all their machines and buildings, but leaving natural things untouched. The grass still grew. The rocks were still there. Even the wooden fence posts were fine, while the metal wire between them had melted away. Linda Carter was trying to send messages to Earth, but nothing was working. "All communication is down," she reported. "Whatever that thing is, it has cut us off from the outside." The crystal creature kept spinning and shooting its white beam. The hospital was next. Then the school. The homes were melting one by one. People ran with whatever they could carry, but there was nowhere to go. Pete Williams tried to fight back. He had his security team fire their weapons at the creature, but the bullets and energy blasts went right through it. The thing did not even seem to notice. It was like shooting at air. "Our weapons are useless," Pete said. His voice was full of anger and fear. "How do you fight something you cannot hit?" More buildings melted under the white beam. The colony that had taken years to build was disappearing in minutes. Jake felt helpless as he watched everything they had worked for turned to slag and smoke. The crystal creature showed no sign of stopping. It moved through the air like it owned the sky. The white beam kept firing. Soon there would be nothing left of their home. People gathered in the areas where only natural things remained. They hid behind rocks and trees. They watched their world burn and wondered if they would live to see another day. Jake looked at the scared faces around him. These were good people who had come to New Eden to build a better life. Now they had nothing left except the clothes on their backs and the ground beneath their feet. The crystal creature continued its work of destruction, and there seemed to be no way to stop it. The sun was setting, and the crystal creature was still destroying everything it could find. Jake Murphy led a group of survivors through what was left of the colony. They moved carefully from one safe spot to another. The creature seemed to ignore them as long as they stayed away from anything made by human hands. Dr. Amy Brooks carried a notebook and pen. She was writing down everything she saw. "I need to understand what this thing is doing," she said to Jake, as they hid behind a large rock. "There has to be a reason for all this. The rock was natural, so the creature left it alone. But when someone had tried to hide behind a concrete wall, the white beam had melted both the wall and the person." Jake tried not to think about that. Linda Carter had gathered the remaining colonists in the agricultural area. The farms were mostly safe because they grew real plants in real dirt. The creature did not seem to care about living things. Only machines and buildings made by humans were targets. "We have maybe 60 people left," Linda told Jake when he found her. "The others were caught when their hiding places got hit." Chris Nelson was working with some old radio equipment he had found in a storage shed. The shed was made of wood, so it had survived. The radio was very old and simple. "I am getting signals from other colonies," he said. "They are all saying the same thing." Jake listened to the crackling voices on the radio. Colony after colony was reporting attacks by crystal creatures. The things had appeared all across human space at the same time. Everywhere they went, they destroyed technology and left nature alone. "This is not random," Dr. Brooks said. She had been studying the pattern of destruction all day. "These creatures know exactly what they are doing. They can tell the difference between natural things and things we made." Pete Williams came back from a scouting mission. His face was grim. "I found the remains of our defense systems," he said. "Everything we had is gone. Plasma cannons melted like plastic. The missiles just went right through that thing like it was not even there." Amy Brooks wrote more notes in her book. "The creature exists in a different space than we do," she said. "That is why our weapons cannot touch it. But its weapons can touch us." On the radio, they heard more bad news. A military ship had tried to attack one of the creatures. The ship's weapons had no effect at all. The creature had destroyed the ship in seconds. Hundreds of soldiers were dead, and the creature was not even scratched. "How many of these things are out there?" Jake asked Chris Nelson. Chris adjusted the radio dials. "From what I can hear, maybe 50 or 60. They hit all the major colonies. At the same time, Earth is sending ships, but I do not think it will help." The crystal creature in their sky was still working. It moved slowly over the ruins of the colony, looking for anything it had missed. Sometimes it would fire its white beam at a small piece of metal or a broken computer. It was very thorough. Sam Davis, the colony engineer, was studying the creature through an old telescope. "I think I know what it is," he said. "This thing is some kind of immune system, like white blood cells in a body." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. Sam pointed at the creature with his finger. "Think about it. We humans have been spreading across the galaxy building cities and factories. What if something sees that as an infection? What if these creatures were made to stop us?" Dr. Brooks looked up from her notes. "An immune system for the galaxy itself. That would explain why they appeared everywhere at once, and why they only attack our technology." Linda Carter was listening to their conversation. "But who would build something like that?" she asked. "Someone who was here before us," Amy Brooks said. "Someone who wanted to make sure no one else made the same mistakes they did." The idea made Jake feel cold inside. Somewhere in the distant past, another race had built these crystal creatures. They had programmed them to destroy any civilization that got too advanced. Now humanity had triggered the system, and the creatures were doing their job. On the radio, more reports came in. The creatures were not just destroying colonies. They were taking apart anything more complex than simple tools. Even metal knives were being melted down. Only the most basic things were safe. Kevin Hall was a young man who had been studying old human cultures. He came running to their group with something in his hands. "Look at this," he said. He held up a stone knife he had found in the ruins of the museum. "The creature walked right past this," Kevin said. "It melted all the metal tools but left this alone." Dr. Brooks took the stone knife and looked at it carefully. This was made by hand, using only natural materials. No machines were used to make it. "So the creature can tell the difference," Jake said, "between things made by hand and things made by machines." Amy Brooks was getting excited. The quantum signature would be different. Something made by human hands would have a different energy, pattern than something made in a factory. Pete Williams was not convinced. "Even if that is true, what good does it do us? We cannot fight that thing with stone knives." But Kevin Hall had a different idea. "Maybe we can," he said. "Our ancestors fought wars with nothing but weapons they made themselves. Stone spears, wooden clubs, bows and arrows. That thing is the size of a building," Pete said. "What is a stone spear going to do against it?" Amy Brooks was writing more notes. "Actually, it might work," she said. "If the creature recognizes handmade weapons as natural, then they might be able to exist in the same space. They might be able to touch it." Jake looked at the group of scared survivors around him. They had lost everything. Their homes were gone. Their technology was useless. All they had left were their hands and their minds. But maybe that was enough. Maybe the very thing that made them human was the key to surviving this attack. The crystal. Creature continued its slow patrol over the dead colony, but now Jake was beginning to form a plan. 3 days had passed since the crystal creature first appeared. The colonists were running out of food and water. Everything they needed had been destroyed or was too dangerous to reach. Jake Murphy watched his people grow weaker and knew they could not last much longer. The creature had finished destroying all the big targets. Now it was hunting for smaller things. It found a metal spoon someone had dropped and melted it with a thin beam of light. It found a plastic bottle and turned it to ash. Nothing made by machines was safe. Dr. Amy Brooks had not slept in 2 days. She kept studying the creature and writing in her notebook. "It's getting more sensitive," she told Jake. "At first, it only went after big technology. Now it's destroying anything that was not made completely by hand." Linda Carter was trying to keep everyone calm, but Jake could see the fear in her eyes. "The water purification tablets are gone," she said quietly. "We will have to drink from the stream, but without testing, we do not know if it's safe." Pete Williams had given up trying to fight the creature with normal weapons. Instead, he was learning to make things the old way. He carved a spear from a tree, branch, and sharpened the tip with a stone. "If we are going to survive, we need to think like our ancestors," he said. Kevin Hall was teaching people how to make fire without matches. He showed them how to find good rocks for making tools. He had studied these things in school but never thought he would need them to stay alive. "The old ways kept humans alive for thousands of years," he said. "They can keep us alive now." But not everyone was learning fast enough. An old man named Frank tried to use his metal glasses to start a fire. The creature saw the metal from a mile away. The white beam struck before anyone could warn him. Frank was gone in an instant, and his glasses were nothing but melted metal. on the ground. After that, everyone was more careful. They threw away anything that was not made from natural materials. Clothes with metal buttons had to go. Shoes with plastic soles were too dangerous. Soon, everyone was wearing simple cloth and leather. Sam Davis found some old books in the ruins of the library. The building had burned, but some books had survived because they were made of paper and cloth. "These are books about primitive technology," he said. "How to make tools from stone and wood, how to build shelters without modern materials." Jake gathered everyone together to share what they had learned. "The creature can tell the difference between natural things and artificial things," he said. "But it's not just about the materials. It's about how they were made." Amy Brooks had figured out more of the science behind it. "Every atom in the universe has a quantum signature," she explained. "When humans make something by hand, the signature stays natural. But when machines make something, the signature changes. The creature can read these signatures." "So a wooden spear carved by hand would be invisible to it," Kevin Hall said. "But a wooden spear made by a machine would be destroyed." "Exactly," Amy said. "The creature was programmed to recognize the difference between natural creation and artificial manufacturing." This gave Jake an idea, but it was a crazy one. "What if we could hurt it?" he said. "What if handmade weapons could actually touch the creature?" Pete Williams shook his head. "Even if they could touch it, what would be the point? You saw how big that thing is. A spear against something like that would be like an ant attacking an elephant." But Amy Brooks was thinking about it differently. "Size might not matter if the creature is not used to being hurt at all," she said. "It has never had to defend itself. It might be more fragile than we think." The group spent the next day making weapons the old way. They carved spears from tree branches. They made bows from flexible wood and string from plant fibers. They napped stone points and tied them to wooden shafts with strips of leather. It was hard work. Most of them had never made anything by hand before. Their fingers got cut on the sharp stones. The wood cracked when they tried to shape it, but slowly they began to get better at it. Chris Nelson managed to make contact with other colonies using his old radio. The news was not good. "Most of the colonies are gone," he reported. "The ones that are left are in the same situation we are. No technology, no way to fight back." "Have any of them tried using primitive weapons?" Jake asked. Chris shook his head. "Most people do not even know how to make them. They are just waiting to die." But there was one bit of good news. A colony on the planet Miller had reported that their creature had moved on after destroying everything. "Maybe they finished their job and leave," Linda Carter said hopefully. Amy Brooks was not so sure. "Our creature is still here because it keeps finding things to destroy. As long as we have anything artificial, it will stay." That night, Jake could not sleep. He walked to the edge of their camp and looked up at the crystal creature hanging in the dark sky. It pulsed with cold light like an alien heart. He gripped the wooden spear he had made and wondered if he was crazy enough to try using it. The creature had taken everything from them. Their homes, their technology, their future. All they had left were the skills their ancestors had used to survive. Skills that had been nearly forgotten in the modern world, but maybe those old skills were exactly what they needed. Maybe the answer to their problem was not in moving forward, but in going back. Back to the time when humans had nothing but their hands and their intelligence to keep them alive. Jake made his decision. Tomorrow they would find out if primitive weapons could hurt an advanced alien. It was their only chance. Either the creature would kill them all, or they would discover that. Sometimes the oldest solutions were the best ones. The crystal creature continued its patrol above them, and Jake gripped his handmade spear tighter. Jake Murphy stood at the edge of the camp, holding his wooden spear. The crystal creature was moving toward them again. It had found their last water purifier and destroyed it an hour ago. Now there was nothing left for it to target except the colonists themselves. "This is insane," Pete Williams said, but he gripped his own spear tightly. We are about to attack something that destroyed our entire colony with sticks and stones. Dr. Amy Brooks checked her handmade bow one more time. The string was made from plant fibers and the arrows had stone points. Everything was created using only natural materials and human hands. The science says it should work, she said. But science has been wrong before. Linda Carter had convinced most of the colonists to move back to a safe distance. Only the strongest fighters would try to attack the creature. If this failed, someone needed to survive to warn other colonies. You are either heroes or fools, she told the attack group. Maybe both. Kevin Hall was the youngest of the fighters, but he had made the best weapons. His sling was perfectly balanced and he could hit a target from 50 yards away. My ancestors used these to kill giants, he said. Maybe we can too. The crystal creature was getting closer. It moved through the air without making any sound. The patterns on its surface shifted and flowed like liquid light. Jake had been watching it for days, but it still made him feel sick to look at directly. Remember what we learned? Amy Brooks said to the group. The creature exists partially outside our normal space, but if our theory is right, then handmade weapons should be able to reach it. Sam Davis had made a war club from a tree root. The heavy wood felt good in his hands. What if we are wrong? He asked. What if our weapons go right through it like all the others? Then we die, Jake said simply. But if we do nothing, we die anyway. At least this way we go down fighting. The creature stopped moving when it was about 100 yards away. It seemed to be scanning the area looking for more technology to destroy. The colonists were careful to keep only natural things near them. Chris Nelson was watching from a safe distance with his old radio. If this works, I will spread the word to every colony still alive, he promised. If it does not work, then at least people will know you tried. Karen White had been a soldier before coming to New Eden. She understood tactics and had helped plan their attack. Hit it fast and hard from multiple directions, she said. Do not give it time to react. The crystal creature began to glow brighter. Jake knew that meant it was getting ready to use its white beam weapon. They had to act now or lose their chance. For New Eden, Jake shouted, and threw his spear with all his strength. The wooden spear flew through the air, straight and true. Jake expected it to pass through the creature harmlessly, like every other weapon they had tried. Instead, something amazing happened. The spear hit solid matter. It struck the crystal surface with a sound like breaking glass and stuck there. Cracks spread out from the impact point, and the creature made a noise Jake had never heard before, a high-pitched wail that hurt his ears. It worked! Amy Brooks shouted and fired her bow. The stone-tipped arrow hit the creature and more cracks appeared. Our weapons can hurt it! The creature spun around, trying to locate its attackers. It had never been hurt before and did not know how to respond. The white beam fired wildly, missing the humans completely. Pete Williams charged forward with his spear ready. The creature tried to hit him with its beam, but Pete rolled to the side and thrust his weapon up into the crystal body. The spear point scraped against the surface and left a deep gouge. Kevin Hall was using his sling to deadly effect. Stone after stone flew from the leather pouch and struck the creature. Each hit made the crystal surface crack a little more. The creature was starting to look damaged, but it was learning fast. The wild beam attacks became more focused. The creature began targeting the humans with precision. A blast barely missed Sam Davis and melted the ground where he had been standing. Stay spread out, Karen White yelled. Do not give it an easy target. The battle was unlike anything in human history. Primitive weapons against advanced alien technology. But somehow the primitive weapons were winning. Every spear throw and arrow shot damaged the creature more. The creature tried to retreat into the sky, but the humans followed it. Amy Brooks had made grappling hooks from wood and rope. The fighters used them to climb up the crystal surface while it was distracted by other attacks. Jake found himself standing on the creature's back while it spun and twisted in the air. He held on with one hand and stabbed down with a stone knife. The blade cut deep into the crystal and strange liquid began to leak out. "The core!" Amy Brooks shouted from below. "You need to hit the central core!" Jake looked down through the crystal surface and saw what she meant. Deep inside, the creature was a bright ball of energy. That had to be its heart or brain or whatever kept it alive. Pete Williams had climbed up the other side. He had a long spear and was trying to reach the core from above. "I can almost reach it," he said. The creature bucked like a wild horse trying to throw them off. Jake felt his grip slipping but managed to hold on. Below him, Kevin Hall was still hitting it with stones from his sling. Each impact weakened the crystal shell around the core. "Together!" Jake yelled to Pete. "On 3, we both strike the core." Pete nodded and raised his spear. Jake lifted his stone knife. The creature was spinning faster now, desperate to shake them loose. 1, Jake counted. 2, Pete replied. 3, they both shouted and struck down with all their strength. The spear and knife hit the energy core at exactly the same time. There was a flash of brilliant light, and the creature let out a scream that shattered every piece of glass for miles around. Jake and Pete were thrown clear as the creature began to fall from the sky. They hit the ground hard, but scrambled to their feet to watch what happened next. The crystal creature crashed into the earth with tremendous force. Cracks ran across its entire surface like a spider web. The light inside began to flicker and fade. Then with one final pulse of energy, the creature died. The crystal shell crumbled to dust, and the energy core went dark. What had seemed invincible just minutes before was now nothing but glittering powder on the ground. The colonists cheered and ran toward the fighters. They had done the impossible. They had killed the creature with nothing but handmade weapons and human courage. The crystal creature was dying, but it was not dead yet. As Jake Murphy and Pete Williams rolled away from the crash site, the alien thing began to pulse with new energy. The cracks in its surface started to glow, and the core flickered back to life. "It's trying to repair itself," Dr. Amy Brooks shouted from where she was helping injured colonists. "We need to finish it now before it gets stronger." The creature was no longer floating in the air, but it was still dangerous. Beams of white light shot out from the cracks in its crystal shell. The beams were smaller now, but just as deadly. One of them nearly hit Linda Carter as she ran for cover. Jake grabbed another spear that Kevin Hall had made. "Everyone with weapons, get ready," he called to the colonists. "This is not over yet." More people joined the fight now that they knew their primitive weapons could work. Sam Davis led a group armed with clubs and axes made from wood and stone. Karen White organized the archers who had bows and arrows. Even some of the older colonists picked up rocks to throw. The creature was trying to get back into the air, but its crystal shell was too damaged. Every time it lifted off the ground, it crashed back down again. The core inside was working hard to fix the damage, but the repairs were slow. Pete Williams had found a weak spot where several cracks met together. He drove his spear deep into the opening and twisted it. Strange fluid leaked out, and the creature made that horrible wailing sound again. "Keep hitting the cracks," he yelled. "That is where it is vulnerable." Kevin Hall was moving around the creature with his sling. He had learned to aim for the spots where the crystal was already damaged. Each stone he threw made the cracks bigger. His accuracy was amazing for someone so young, but the creature was fighting back hard. It could not fly anymore, but it could still spin on the ground. The spinning made it hard to get close without being knocked down, and the light beams kept firing in all directions. "We need to coordinate our attacks," Karen White said. She had military training and understood how to fight as a team. "Half of us distract it from one side while the others attack from behind." The plan worked well. While Sam Davis and his club fighters kept the creature busy on the front side, Jake and Pete attacked the core from the rear. Amy Brooks and her archers shot arrows into the cracks to keep them from closing up. The battle went on for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The creature was getting weaker, but so were the humans. Several colonists had been hurt by the light beams. Others were exhausted from fighting. Chris Nelson was still at his radio sending updates to other colonies. "New Eden colony reporting," he said into the microphone. "We are engaging the creature with primitive weapons. Repeat, primitive weapons are effective against the crystal entities." Responses came back from across human space. Other colonies were listening, and some were trying the same tactics. A few reported success, but many others had no one left who knew how to make handmade weapons. "We have to keep fighting," Jake said, as he pulled his spear out of another crack. "If we can kill this thing, maybe we can teach others how to do it too." The creature was getting desperate. It began firing its beams faster and with less accuracy. The white light cut through the air around the colonists, but most of the shots missed. The targeting system was breaking down along with everything else. Linda. Carter had organized the non-fighters to help in other ways. They brought water to the fighters and helped move the wounded to safety. They also gathered more materials to make additional weapons if needed. "The core is exposed," Amy Brooks called out. She was close to the creature and could see through, a large crack in the shell. "I can see the energy center clearly now." Jake looked where she was pointing and saw the bright ball of light inside the crystal body. It was smaller than before and flickering like a candle in the wind. This was their chance to finish the fight. "Everyone focus on the core," he shouted. "Hit it with everything you have." The colonists attacked from all sides at once. Spears and arrows and stones all aimed at the central energy source. The creature tried to protect itself, but there were too many attackers coming from too many directions. Pete Williams was the first to land a solid hit on the core. His spear went right through a crack and struck the ball of energy. There was a flash of light and part of the core went dark. That opened the way for others. Kevin Hall put a stone from his sling right into the center of the core. Sam Davis reached through with his club and smashed another section. Amy Brooks put 3 arrows into the energy ball, one after another. The creature was dying for real this time. The light inside grew dimmer and dimmer. The crystal shell stopped trying to repair itself. The spinning slowed down and finally stopped completely. Jake climbed up onto the creature one last time. He could see the core clearly now through the broken crystal. It was just a small ball of fading light. He raised his stone knife and brought it down as hard as he could. The knife blade cut right through the energy core and split it in half. The light went out like a candle being blown out. The crystal shell cracked completely and fell apart into thousands of pieces. This time, the creature was really dead. No more light, no more movement, no more danger. Just a pile of broken crystal scattered across the red dirt of New Eden. The colonists stood around the remains and tried to understand what they had just done. They had defeated an alien weapon system using nothing but tools their ancestors would have recognized. Stone and wood and human determination had won against advanced technology. "It's over," Linda Carter said, but her voice was full of wonder rather than relief. "We actually killed it." Jake looked at the primitive weapons in his hands and then at the shattered remains of the crystal creature. Sometimes the old ways really were the best ways. Sometimes going backward was the only way to move forward. The battle was won, but the war was just beginning. There were dozens of these creatures across human space, and now they knew how to fight them. The crystal creature was nothing but glittering dust on the ground. Jake Murphy stood among the remains and felt something he had not felt in days. Hope. They had done the impossible and lived to tell about it. Dr. Amy Brooks was already studying the leftover crystal fragments. She picked up pieces with her bare hands and held them up to the light. "The quantum signature is completely different now," she said. "Whatever energy was controlling this thing is gone." Chris Nelson was busy at his radio spreading the word to every human colony still alive. "This is New Eden calling all stations," he said into the microphone. "We have successfully destroyed a crystal entity using primitive handmade weapons. Repeat, primitive weapons work against the entities." The responses came back quickly. Colonies across human space were listening and many were trying the same tactics. Some reported success, but others said it was too late. Their people did not know how to make the old tools, and the creatures had already destroyed everything. Linda Carter was organizing the survivors and planning what to do next. "We need to rebuild," she said. "But we need to rebuild differently this time. We cannot depend only on advanced technology anymore." Pete Williams was teaching people how to make better weapons. The fight with the creature had shown him what worked and what did not. "The key is balance," he explained. "The weapon has to be heavy enough to do damage, but light enough to throw accurately." Kevin Hall had become the expert on primitive tools. People came to him to learn how to make fire without matches and how to find the right stones for knapping. "These skills kept humans alive for thousands of years," he told them. "They can keep us alive now, too." Jake walked through what was left of the colony, thinking about the future. Most of their buildings were gone, but the people were still here. They could rebuild the structures, but they needed to rebuild their knowledge, too. Amy Brooks had figured out more of the science behind the crystal creatures. "They were definitely created by another species," she said. "A species that reached a high level of technology and then decided to prevent anyone else from doing the same thing." "Why would they do that?" Jake asked. Amy held up a fragment of crystal that still glowed faintly. "Maybe they destroyed themselves with their own technology. Maybe they built these guardians to make sure no other species made the same mistake." Davis was working on plans for new buildings that would use both modern knowledge and old techniques. "We can have electricity and running water," he said, "but we need to make sure we can survive without them if we have to." On the radio, more good news was coming in. The colony on Beta 7 had killed their creature using stone axes and wooden spears. The settlement on New Mars had used slings and arrows to bring down their attacker. Slowly but surely, humans were learning to fight back. But there was bad news, too. Earth itself was under attack by 3 of the largest crystal creatures ever seen. The military was helpless against them. Millions of people were in danger, and there was no time to teach them primitive weapon making. "We need to go to Earth," Jake said after hearing the reports. "We need to show them what we learned here." Linda Carter shook her head. "How can we get there? All our ships were destroyed. We have no way off this planet." Chris Nelson looked up from his radio. "Actually, we might," he said. "I have been talking to a cargo ship that is still intact. The captain says his ship only has basic systems, so the creatures ignored it. He can pick us up." The plan came together quickly. A small team would go to Earth to teach the military how to make and use primitive weapons. The rest would stay on New Eden to rebuild and continue developing the new techniques. Jake volunteered to lead the team going to Earth. Pete Williams and Kevin Hall would come with him along with Amy Brooks to explain the science. It would be dangerous, but someone had to do it. While they waited for the cargo ship to arrive, the colonists worked on perfecting their weapons and tools. They learned that certain types of wood worked better than others. They discovered which stones made the sharpest points. They practiced until they could make fire and tools quickly and efficiently. Amy Brooks made copies of all her notes about the creatures and how to fight them. "This knowledge needs to spread to every human world," she said. "We cannot let these things destroy our civilization." When the cargo ship finally arrived, it was smaller and older than Jake had expected. The captain was a gruff man named Bill, who had spent his whole life flying between the outer colonies. "I always said simple was better," he told them. "Guess I was right." As they prepared to leave New Eden, Jake took one last look at the remains of their colony. It had been a good place to live before the crystal creature came. Now it was just empty land covered with the ruins of their old life. But maybe that was not a bad thing. Maybe they needed to lose everything to remember what was really important. The buildings and machines were gone, but the people were still here. The knowledge was still here. The human spirit was still here. The cargo ship lifted off and headed for Earth. In the hold, they carried crates full of handmade weapons and detailed instructions on how to make more. They also carried something more valuable than any technology: They carried the knowledge that sometimes the oldest solutions were the best solutions, that human hands and human intelligence could overcome any challenge, that the species that had survived with nothing but stone tools for thousands of years could survive anything. As they flew through space toward the embattled Earth, Jake thought about the future. It would be different from what they had planned, less dependent on machines and more dependent on human skills. But maybe that was how it should be. The crystal creatures had tried to destroy human civilization. Instead, they had made it stronger. They had forced humans to remember who they really were and what they were really capable of. Jake gripped the wooden spear in his hands and smiled. Let the creatures come. Humanity was ready for them now. With stick and stone and the courage of their ancestors, they would fight back, and they would win.